Welcome to my channel. And like always, we're going to bring you today, got some receipts. And we're going to call this episode number 2 because the devil is a Democrat. And I'm going to bring the receipts. And like I said, this is blue business. I don't know nothing about the red. I don't know nothing about the other side. I don't know nothing about the Republicans, the MAGAs, but I know everything about the blue. I know everything about the Democrats. I've been a lifelong Democrat my entire lifetime. And like I said, my job is to get you to get out of that burning house. So when you individuals want to sit back and, oh, you don't say nothing about Trump. Listen, I don't have no smoke for the executive in chief of the United States of America, in which, my ancestors, pretty much, this is our sacred land. And we're going to, have these conversations moving forward. But the truth shall make us free. And I'm calling out, our educators, because our educators are responsible for the condition that we are in today. Because if you look at the data, if you, put, 20, 30 years into, something, and you look at the data and you say, man, we've come a long way. It's a success. We're winning. It's working on its own axle. We can actually, God is good, because we have figured out how to leave our children's children an inheritance. And that's biblical. But contrary unto what I've just aforementioned, look at the situation right now. You have the baby boomers. The baby boomers claim to be the greatest generation. Okay. And then you have Generation X. X is an unknown factor in mathematical terms. And, we have to identify what X is. But the baby boomers, seem to have tried to sacrifice us. And God has intervened because we are, the chosen generation to fix and to right the wrongs, because the baby boomers, are expiring. It's just that's how life is. Okay. But they also taught us about Darwin and evolution and all of that, because, as educators, they were taught these things from people who don't love us, who don't know us, who don't care anything about us. And, they're still holding on to those lies, because you could talk to, a baby boomer right now and they still believe in evolution. Okay, they still believe in that. And that's something that Darwin came up with. It was just a theory. But when it comes to the Homo sapien, we have to tell the truth and shame the devil. And every time that I have a conversation, with a baby boomer and I share some information, oh, we knew that. Okay, but why, did you choose not to share that information with your people? And that's the issue that I have, because the truth is nothing to be hidden. And it seems like it's about, the talented people. The one had one talent, the other one had 5 talents, and another had 10 talents, from the Bible stories. And the one who had that one talent buried it. It seems like you guys have buried the truth. And the truth shall make us free, but you guys don't want us to be free, because through your, your career and your life experience and your affirmative actions that work for you, you lived a good life. So now you're basically just sacrificing a generation, or doing unto, a generation that they did unto you, because hurt people hurt people. But I basically tell you it's time to repent, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And if you repent, there's no condemnation when it comes to God, but the truth is the truth. And the truth is coming out about the Democratic Party. And this is episode number 2 of the Devil is a Democrat. And I'll debate that. We're going to go on a Charlie Kirk tour. I'll debate anybody about that, because I'm talking about the rudiments of the philosophy, the ideology, and it lines perfectly up, because like I said, the devil tried to tempt Jesus. Jesus said, away with you, Satan. And that's the same thing we got to say, but because the devil is a Democrat. And there's some things that's been happening, recently. And social media, is the phenomenon, and social media influencers and, independent journalists. We have to, be the truth bearers, because when you watch the news, they basically program you and tell you what they want you to think, because they got us thinking that, Barack Obama was a brother. And Barack Hussein Obama wasn't even born on the mainland. They based some people saying he was born in Nigeria. Okay, even if you was born in Honolulu to a lily white mother, Okay. You not even from the mainland. So this is why, he pushed everything, every agenda under the sun other than, getting, behind Black America and supporting Black America. He was the first man of color to be president of the United States on record. Okay, because that's debatable as well, because they stole the history, and created their own narrative. But, there's no way, he was for us. He was for them, because you could look at, what he and Michelle, or, what they're doing, with the gay agenda, and there's nothing, like I said, I'm not condemning people who are gay. I'm not condemning that. But when it's an agenda, it's a problem. Just like, me being a born again former whoremonger, I'm not going to push a narrative and agenda and say, you need a group of women, you need to be smashing women every night. I'm not going to tell you that, because I know it's wrong. Okay, because my convictions, like I said, I've repented, and I love my neighbors, I love myself. So I'm offering you the same opportunity to get your life right, so we can actually, come together, because a house divided cannot stand, and we need to really figure this out. We really do, because the devil is a Democrat. And a name came up by the name of Melissa Horton. And Melissa Horton was a Democrat. She was a part of the Minnesota House of Representatives with the labor. She passed a whole bunch of bills, but she voted against the Democrats in Minnesota to fund illegal immigrants, and her vote basically stalemated it. And somehow her and her husband became unalive, but we don't know anything about that, because the devil is a Democrat. It's kind of like state property. Get down, lay down. Okay, because she died, was killed, So like I said, I'm coming with the receipts today. We're going to talk about Melissa Horton. We're going to talk about Sheridan Gorman. If you did not know, Sheridan Gorman was the 18-year-old college student at Loyola, Chicago. 18-year-old was killed by an illegal immigrant, no protest. We don't know anything about that. And then, we're going to talk about the SAVE Act and how hypocritical these Democrats are. And that's pretty much, you can't vote without being properly identified, meaning you got to have an ID to vote. But somehow, some way, the Democrats are on some, on something crazy, on something crazy. And we're going to talk about that as well. And then we're going to close out with I Want to Be Like Mike. Okay, so let's get into it. So listen, Melissa Horton, she was, let me see here, I'm gonna show you a video. I'm gonna show you a video of Melissa Horton. Let me see here, where's Melissa at? Okay, there it is. Y'all gonna have to check this out. All right, now check this video out. I'm gonna let you hear it. But I'm going to give you some context in the sense of what happened, because Melissa Horton casted the lone Democratic no vote against providing state-funded health care to illegal immigrants in Minnesota, breaking party lines in a 67-member chamber and becoming the deciding vote that blocked the measure. Her assassination shortly after has fueled intense speculation of conspiracy theories and raw anger among conservatives who see it being retaliation for defying the progressive agenda on immigration and taxpayer funding benefits. Do you believe her murder was connected to her courageous vote? And you can actually, put, yes or no in the comments, but let's go ahead and just watch this. And this is Melissa Horton before they killed her for basically not supporting, giving funding to illegal immigrants.
That wouldn't include that provision. I know that people will be hurt by that vote, and we worked very hard to try to get a budget deal that wouldn't include that provision. I know that people will be hurt by that vote, and we worked very hard to try to get a budget deal that wouldn't include that provision.
Okay, so basically she tried to, she didn't want that provision, mandated. And just like the Democrat vote to stop illegal health care for illegals in Minnesota was Melissa Horton. one of 67, the deciding vote. She was killed after casting that vote, and she knew what was coming. The devil is a Democrat. Think about that. Now you see why, these individuals have to get out there and, sell their souls. They have to get out there and lie. Now you see why Obama, signed the law to legalize lying, which is propaganda. We'll get into that today. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, okay, the episode 1, I'm going to go back and tag it as episode 1 because we have to stay on this and keep the same energy because the devil is a Democrat. So what do you think about this female? Okay, Melissa Horton getting killed because she went against, their progressive agenda. And I'm going to let you hear it one more time and I'm going to move on.
I know that people will be hurt.
Look, her voice is cracking, but she was the lone soldier. She basically, as one individual, chose not to go with the crowd. She chose to follow her conscience. She chose to do what was right. And, her death shall not go in vain because the individuals in Minnesota, they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay for everything. Like I said, everybody has to pay for what they've gone through. Anything that you do in the dark will come to the light. And it's just a matter of time. I know Cesar Chavez is in his grave like now turning because Dolores Hortes, his young hyena back in the day, has basically claimed that he raped her on 2 occasions and she have 2 children, and other people coming out and they're so fast to take down the statues, so fast to condemn him and to destroy his legacy because that is the precursor for Dr. King. Y'all wait and see. So what do y'all think about this? I'm going to play it one more time. Listen to her voice cracking. Listen.
By that vote. And we worked very hard to try to get a budget deal that wouldn't include that provision.
And she said they worked hard to get a budget deal that didn't include that provision. But, with the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, with the former vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, and in that chamber that she's speaking in has a Satan, a thank you or a statue from Satan thanking Tim Walz for allowing the Democratic Satan organization to be a part of what they got going on because the devil is a Democrat, because any God-fearing Christian or somebody that's a true believer will not, and I repeat, will not associate themselves with those people. And this is why you got to come out of that burning house, you Democrats, because like I said, you guys are going to be guilty by association, and don't work your entire lifetime, to take care of your family, to preserve, a legacy, then to somehow watch it crashing all down when God tell you, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. Now, I know a lot of you have no clue who Sheridan Gordon is. I know you guys do not have a clue who Sheridan Gordon is. I'm going to show you a reel or a clip, and this female right here, she's going to just break it down. And you could see her on Instagram, and it's @RealBritHughes, @RealBritHughes. And listen what she has to say about this illegal migrant or illegal immigrant killing an 18-year-old American college student.
Guess how many minutes the major news network spent on Monday night covering the story of the 18-year-old girl who was shot dead in a Chicago park by an illegal alien last weekend? Guess. Zero. 0 minutes of coverage for this college student who was shot in the back of the head for the crime of walking through a park with her friends by an illegal alien who not only shouldn't have been in this country in the first place, but who already had a rap sheet for shoplifting, and who, oh, by the way, couldn't even be taken to jail after he was arrested because, lo and behold, he's got tuberculosis. This should be the scandal of a generation. In a sane world, this story would not just be making ripples over on social media. But apparently we live in a bizarro land where the entire left has decided to worship criminals. I mean, ICE arrests MS-13 gangbangers and child predators, and we get nothing but misreported sob stories for days. An illegal alien flees from the cops, leaves his kids standing in the middle of the snow, and congressmen are beating feet out of D.C. for photo ops with them. And then this young lady gets gunned down in cold blood by a diseased criminal from a foreign country, and we get crickets. Don't you ever tell me there's not an agenda here. This is nothing but an agenda. This is the intentional withholding of important information so that you won't know what's going on in your own country as it falls apart. Wake up.
And that's real. Okay, because they're holding back the stats on crime here in Los Angeles because they said it's jaw-dropping in the sense of what's really going on. So listen, a house divided cannot stand. So there has to be an independent body. There has to be, some nonpartisan independence, some God-fearing, believers to basically set the record straight. And as long as this burning house is in effect, we're going to have these problems. Okay, we're going to have these problems. And I'm telling you right now, we need to go ahead and fix what we got going on because God's people shall not perish due to lack of knowledge. So I'm going to go ahead and play it one more time, and then I'm going to give some commentary, while she's talking.
Guess how many minutes the major news network spent on Monday night covering the story of the 18-year-old girl who was shot dead in a Chicago park by an illegal alien last weekend? Guess. Zero.
Did y'all hear about it? Did you hear about it? I didn't hear about it. This hit my timeline, and I'm like sitting back saying, wow, 18-year-old female killed by an illegal gets zero coverage. But when you have ICE agitators, trying to run over the police or run over the ICE agents or just impeding, their job, we go crazy and that's all over the news, and you want to condemn American citizens. So who like I said, the devil is a Democrat. That's all I could say.
12 minutes of coverage for this college student who was shot in the back of the head.
That's somebody's daughter, man. Shot in the back of the head by an illegal immigrant. And nobody know anything about it. And if it wasn't for the phenomenon of social media, you wouldn't know about it either.
For the crime of walking through a park with her friends by an illegal alien who not only shouldn't have been in this country in the first place, but who already had a rap sheet for shoplifting, and who, oh, by the way, couldn't even be taken to jail after he was arrested because, lo and behold, he's got tuberculosis.
That's crazy because the accused killer of slaying Yorktown class student misses court date due to tuberculosis. So he didn't even make it to court. So this is crazy. And he got TB. Tuberculosis.
This should be the scandal of a generation.
Like she said, this should be the scandal of a generation, but somehow we continue to just pick and choose, what we want. And if it's, left leaning, they want to demonize white people. They want to demonize the strong man, and they want to praise and build up the trans and homosexuals and the beta males and all these busters and custers out here in this world. So what I'm saying is the buck stops here. This is our opportunity. This is our moment in history. And like Willie Lynch said, we could do this for hundreds, if not thousands of years, unless a phenomenon happened. And that phenomenon is social media, because we don't have to depend on, legacy media. I was talking to, a constituent or a colleague the other day, and I was sitting back saying, you don't even watch the news? I said, no, I don't watch the news. I watch you. So I said, wow. So that's why I'm bringing the heat. That's why God's people shall not perish due to the lack of knowledge. And this why I'm putting it out there, because the devil is a Democrat.
A sane world, this story would not just be making ripples over on social media. But apparently we live in a bizarro land where the entire left has decided to worship criminals. I mean, ICE arrests MS-13 gangbangers and child predators, and we get nothing but misreported sob stories for days. An illegal alien flees from the cops, leaves his kids standing in the middle of the snow, and congressmen are beating feet out of D.C. for photo ops with them. And then,
y'all remember that little kid? His pops left him. Left him in the snow, and you had all the Democratic elected officials running out there, trying to defend, trying to be a part of it. Because my common sense is telling me that, they are associated with some very bad people. That's what my conscience is telling me. And my common sense is telling me. Just like Jeffrey Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, he was the puppet master. Okay, but who's the Jeffrey Epstein right now? Okay, who did, when Jeffrey Epstein was alive and he was doing what he was doing, he was calling these shots. He created Obama. He created and worked with these individuals to create all of this chaos that we're went through with COVID, with the Bill Gates of the world, the Barack Obamas of the world. And, now the truth is coming out because the truth is undefeated. And it's sad that, the mainstream media is getting called out because, who runs the mainstream media? It's basically like, you got to be a SAG actor to actually work for mainstream media. And it's crazy because, when I watch it, they leave out the most important pieces of information. They leave out key pieces of information, and they, like I said, it's programming. And, and they're programming, our baby boomers. And like I said, Barack Hussein Obama put a law into effect to where they can actually lie to you, meaning lying is legal. So they could just tell you a flat out lie and does not have to be confirmed or debunked. And remember when they was, fact check and the fact checkers and all that, that was a fake scam because they were just trying to push their narrative. And now that they're not in control, now that they're not in power, now we could just call a spade because the devil is a Democrat.
And this young lady gets gunned down in cold blood by a diseased criminal from a foreign country, and we get crickets. Don't you ever tell me there's not an agenda here. This is nothing but an agenda. This is the intentional withholding of important information so that you won't know what's going on in your own country as it falls apart.
Wake up.
So
wake up. And that's real. And that's real. And it was a song back in the day, Wake Up, Wake Up. I think it was Snoop. Used to bang. So listen, man. Start thinking, man. Start putting y'all thinking caps on. And let's start, let's wise up. Because like I said, one of my favorite movies is Baby Boy. And John Singleton wrote it, and it captured the mindset of black men, And there's black men out there. We're full-blown adults, but we have a baby boy mentality because, we were taught that we're not anything. Okay, we was just some cotton-picking slaves, but that's turning out to be a lie. It's not even humanly possible for 700 slaves in a boat to make it from Africa over here, and you just got 7 crewmen. Stop the lies. Okay, it gets deep. Okay, it gets deep because when we start talking about the 5 Negro nations and we start talking about all of that, like I said, the world is going to change. But we got our educators and our scholars and our teachers and preachers somehow, some way is connected to the Democratic Party, and they are out there lying to the people, deceiving. Because if you leave out key pieces of information, if you don't give individuals the tools that they need, to make it in life, then you are guilty for railroading. You are guilty for, for collusion, for basically, destroying a generation. And like I said, the clock is running out. You guys need to get it together and figure this thing out because the Democratic Party is, like I said, the devil is a Democrat, and the word demo is demon, diablo, or devil in Spanish and Portuguese, and the word krat in the Greek is to rule or rule by, and it's right there in our face. So we're going to have to rebuke this devil. We're going to have to get to a whole nother level in life because this is not cool. Okay, you have a Democratic from the Minnesota House of Representatives killed because she was the lone vote that froze funding for giving illegal migrants money. And then you have Sheridan Gorman, an 18-year-old Loyola Chicago college student shot in the back of the head by an illegal migrant, and none of you have heard of it. And then, they're having debates about the SAVE Act because the Trump administration wants to add voter ID when the Democrats somehow think it's okay to not have an ID to vote. And then they have individuals telling me, I got family members, I'm a married woman and I changed my last name. And I'm sitting back like saying, just like anything else, go down there and fix that. You get an opportunity to fix that. So stop with these talking points, stop following the devil and get your life right. Okay? Because this is about right or wrong, positive versus negative, optimism versus pessimism, and literally God versus the devil. It is what it is. So with the SAVE Act, I got a clip of Chuck Schumer. Okay, Chuck Schumer has been going on record, and he's talking about that, this is not, the SAVE Act is not about voter ID, it's about voter suppression. And you can see that clearly that the Democratic Party main objective is illegal immigrants, illegal migrants. But what about the black man? Oh, shut up, nigger. Just do what we tell you to say, slave. Okay. But now that we're finding out we're not slaves, and like I said, I know I'm not a slave. Like I said, there's no way I could wake up and do what I do if I had slave blood in my body. Once I learned the truth and I did that DNA and found out I got 3%, African in me and 97% Native American in me, meaning, we was here 13,000 years before Columbus even existed. Think about that. We could debate how we got here, but clearly this is our land. Okay, and we look at the 13 colonies. Those was 13 black countries. Okay, 13 black countries, and these Europeans and these colonizers were ostracized and kicked out of their own land. And if it wasn't for hooking up with the Chinese, with the Japanese, with the gunpowder, they wouldn't have had a chance, because we was putting hands on them, we was whooping them. Really whooping them. But once they came with that, riding on them horses and forged steel and start popping, then we had to pack up and migrate west, through Texas, through Oklahoma. Then, they destroyed that. Some of us came to Watts. Some of us went back to Chicago. It is what it is. So when you see Chuck Schumer talking about the SAVE Act and he's against voter ID, why don't you remind him how hypocritical he is? Because this is Chuck Schumer in 1996 talking about voter ID. Check it out.
Let's admit the truth. Everywhere people go, they're asked for a social security card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a social security card. Illegal immigrants or others, when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud. If you believe you want to stop fraud in immigration, you have no choice but to support this amendment. Let's admit the truth.
And that amendment is voter ID. Say it ain't so. That amendment is voter ID. How hypocritical is this? But when, you don't want to get killed like, Melissa Horton, out of Minnesota, then you'll just go out and do whatever they tell you to do. And that's real. You'll go out and do whatever they tell you to do. So this is Chuck Schumer talking about voter ID, because listen, I was in Target the other day, bumped the protest and all that. Target is a nice store, unless we got an alternative to go to, the Target boycott, whatever. Okay. So it was a man, we was, talking, he was older than me, and he had bought some Seagram's coolers. And they asked for his ID. And I said, dang, you can't even buy alcohol without an ID, but you can vote without an ID. Make that make sense. So if you don't need an ID to vote, you can vote as many times as you want to. That's the main issue, is the fraud. And them not paying TSA and shutting down DHS with this partial shutdown. It's appalling, because, the Trump administration should not even, associate or talk to these people. Y'all seen, the State of the Union. They wouldn't even stand up. And then you got these foreign-born, Somali pirates and all of this stuff going on. And we sitting back, as black people, we better get a job and all that. So I would actually be proud of any of my colleagues or anybody that I know, that went to federal prisons for stealing billions of dollars. We got brothers in jail on RICOs for just, taking money from, on the grassroots level. Not even no high crimes and misdemeanors. These are just, like I said, trumped up charges. It is what it is. Just like Puffy being in jail right now, when Puffy was no different than Jeffrey Epstein, when Puffy was no different than, Hugh Hefner. And I'm going to tell you this, Magic Johnson does not have AIDS, never had it. He was getting freaky deaky in Hef's house. Okay. And I remember watching, episodes of the Playboy Mansion. There's cameras in every room. So they got Magic, some compromising situations. So they basically told Magic, hey, you retire from AIDS or we're going to expose you. He lied, said he has AIDS. He sacrificed his son to turn into a transgender and all of that because that's what they want. Just like Dwayne Wade and his son, just like, Big Mike, Michelle Obama, whatever the case is. Okay. Because like I said, your silence is not golden. Your silence is basically supporting the facts. Because if these things was not true, why the Obamas haven't come out and addressed these allegations and these issues? Okay, but just back to the subject matter at hand, we're talking about the SAVE Act, and I'm just calling out Chuck Schumer as being a hypocrite because this conversation was about voter ID in 1996, but right now, they're basically, the entire Democratic Party is basically saying you don't need no ID to vote. You got Christians and church folk, all of that working at the polls, basically going to hell because of their association. And like I said, repent because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And if y'all okay with going to hell, I just want y'all to do that over there and not over here, because you're going to get called out by Generation X, and that X is an unknown factor, and that X is about to equal the greatest generation known to man, because we're the generation you can't hoodwink, bamboozle, and lead us astray, because we know the truth, we know the facts, and as the truths and facts begin to reveal, we got the power and the authority and ordained by our God Almighty to put this out there to the universe and let you decide, because one thing that God gives us that's very important is choice. But listen to Chuck Schumer being a hypocrite, talking about voter ID, and he's against it now because they're trying to steal elections with these illegal immigrants. And to my understanding, there won't be an elected Democratic president in a very long time. And all that fake propaganda that you guys have been seeing, the Democrats are lined up to pretty much lose, a whole bunch of seats during the midterms. Now, Al Green, gone. Jasmine Crockett, gone. Okay. So now you're going to see something that you've never seen before, because to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, one nation under God. And we, the people, are going to stand up and be in the gap, because the Democratic Party is, is a shim sham, because the devil runs that party, because the devil is a Democrat. And here, once again, Chuck Schumer, being a hypocrite, talking about voter ID back in 1996. But right now he's holding up payments for TSA workers and all of that, because, they want to change some policies that has nothing to do with TSA, but they want to change the rules with ICE, because ICE is deporting their voters.
Everywhere people go, they're asked for a social security card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a social security card. Illegal immigrants or others, when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud.
He said they could come to this country against the law because of fraud. And now you see the parallel between Melissa Hortman, the woman that was killed, by voting against the fraud in Minnesota. She fought to get legislation without that being included in the bill. But since they included it, her heart and her integrity did not want to support it, because she knew what was going to happen, and she lost her life because of it. Okay. Because of fraud. And now you can understand why the Department of Education is now under the Department of Labor. And I cannot wait to have the conversation, with the Department of Labor, because since it's the Department of Labor, let's put labor back in the curriculum in the public schools, so they can be trained to take care of themselves and have a profession upon graduating high school, because everybody's not college material. And basically, even if you do go to college, you've been indoctrinated into some BS. These kids are stupid. Yeah, they're stupid, because the people that's educating them are stupid. Okay. Because they are sold out. They're sold their souls. You got these teachers, teaching this curriculum, and all it's doing is getting you, taking care of your personal life and putting some money in your pocket, but you're sacrificing your own people because of it. And that's sickening. And I'm going to let Chuck play one more time, and then I'm going to move on to Be Like Mike.
If you believe you want to stop fraud in immigration, you have no choice but to support this amendment. Let's admit the truth.
Listen to him.
Everywhere people go, they're asked for a social security
Yep.
card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a social security card. Illegal immigrants or others, when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud. If you believe you want to stop fraud in immigration, you have no choice but to support this amendment.
Sounds like a Republican to me. You know, what changed? The power structure, you know, the donors, Jeffrey Epstein, Barack Obama signing in legislation to basically, you know, allow propaganda, the Democrats opening the southern border and letting all these, these individuals come into this country, you know, and it's sad. It is what it is. The truth shall make us free, and the devil is a Democrat. So listen. So before, let me see here. I got something here. I saw this. I've seen it for a while, but I want to share this with you. And then I saw an interview with Michelle Obama with her mother, with Gayle King. And there's some videos and stuff out in millions and millions and millions of views. You know, they saying Michelle a man. They saying Obama homosexual. I saw Tucker Carlson podcast where the cab driver saying he gave Obama fellatio. They did cocaine, and he said he know that this wasn't Obama's first or his last time. And Obama's chef died, and the video was still up about them pressuring him to cook humans. And you got Pizzagate, you got the Hillary, you got all of this stuff going on. And I'm sitting back saying, wow, this is crazy, But this is why we're doing a series on the devil is a Democrat. But back to the nature at hand. Now, Mrs. Robinson, Michelle Obama's mother, said this in an interview, one of her last interviews. And I thought it was crazy, but hindsight is 2020. I didn't, feel anything the first time I saw it. But when I really looked into it, I was like, why would her mother say that? So I want you to see this, and then I'm going to show something. Because seeing and hearing is believing, and then I will double back. So remember this commercial? Remember this commercial? That he is me. That he is me. You see that? And I'm pausing it because, like I said, I know that that's copywritten. But sometimes I see that he is me. Okay. Okay, here we go. And remember, look, Mike patting the little boy on his booty. That's the thing that he do. He playing defense, patting that boy on his booty. You remember, he did that when he won one of those NASCAR races. Like I said, to me, it's innocent. Athletes do that all the time, but he's doing that to this kid right here. Check this out. Like Mike, if I could be like Mike. Just think about that. Like Mike, if I could be like Mike. Okay. And in this interview with Michelle Obama and her mother, Gayle King asked a closeout question, and look what she says. Okay, let me cue it up. Let you hear it. Let's go. No, here we go.
And that's the part of life that's important.
Watch what her mother said.
What's the best thing about Michelle Obama that makes you proudest?
Well, now my saying is, when I grow up, I would like to be like Michelle Obama.
Then she laughed. Why would she say that? Why would she say that? I mean, come on.
Best thing about Michelle Obama that makes you proudest?
Well, now my saying is, when I grow up, I would like to be like Michelle Obama.
Hold up.
Proudest.
And what does that mean?
Well, now
what does that mean?
Saying is, when I grow up, I would like to be like.
Why would she say that? 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 Think
Part
about
of
it.
life that's important.
What's the best thing about Michelle Obama that makes you proudest?
Well, now my saying is, when I grow up, I would like to be like.
Why would she say that? Just think about it. Why would she say that? And that's crazy. Why would she say that? So listen, it's time to really, for us to not be distracted as a people. And like I said, you do the history, the Homo sapiens, the original Homo sapien is melanated. So black people created everything. Blackness was in all races, all whatever, all cultures, Chinese, Japanese, white, like I said, we created it all. But for some strange reason, they came up with, whiteness. Okay. I've been knowing this, but I'm going to put some energy into it moving forward because one of my favorite movies is Gangs of New York. And it was white versus white. It was a class thing. Red versus the blue. But somehow, they decided to band together to destroy the original concept and the original mode. But we're not going to let that happen. We're not going to let that happen. So let me just give you some receipts, on why, Chuck Schumer and all the rest of these guys could lie through their teeth because I put a video out the other day. And let me see here. So just fun fact. Okay, let me see here. The Smith-Mundt Act, okay, the original law, Smith-Mundt Act of 1948. Barack Obama signed a bill canceling out the Smith-Mundt Act in 2012, and it passed part of the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year of 2013. So what changed? Okay, before 2012, going all the way back 60 years at the time, the U.S. government funded media was restricted from distributing propaganda in the United States. So basically, that act was to prevent domestic propaganda. But Obama signed a bill, so that means they can lie through their teeth. It's all lies. And why would he do that as president? Because he's living a lie. Okay. He's not, who he claims to be. He's not even an American. He's an American, but he was not even born on the mainland. The debate is he's either born in Hawaii or Africa. Okay. And I believe his father is Nigeria, but his mom is Lily White. So he's not even born on the mainland. So he does not have a connection with black men, but he has authority, he has power and influence. So, all these brothers who, want to be successful in media, they'll sit back and try to be associated with him. But like I said, on the grassroots level, go to hell, bro. You're not like us. You're not from the mainland. You don't have, this blood in your body. You're not connected to this promised land that's here in the United States, because to sign that bill to basically, to cancel out a bill that prevented domestic propaganda. So basically, when he signed the bill, those materials can be accessed within the U.S. American journalists and researchers can request or view the same content that's broadcast overseas and play it right here in the United States, because it was a game, just like, going to space. They basically went to a Hollywood studio, depicted that they went to the moon, and the Chinese, the Japanese, and Russia, done lost a whole lot of lives trying to get there, but it was just all propaganda. Okay, because my theory is if you went, back in the 60s, then why haven't you been back since? Think about it. It doesn't make sense. But the fact that the president of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, has basically, put in a bill to lie to Americans, what does that mean? To me, it means the devil is a Democrat, and we're going to tell the truth and shame the devil. So like I said, I'm going to call this episode 2, because the lies and deceit and the truth is coming out. God is undefeated. Generation X, hopefully I can speak to y'all spirit, because there's a lot of things on the line. We're dealing with these homosexual men, these beta men, these busters and these custers, these individuals who are, hiding behind their wives, they're educating your children, but they got Roman noodle spines. They're soft, they're sissies, they're girly men, all of that, because why can't the strong man speak on strong man? Because we're going to need all the alpha males to step up. And even if you're not an alpha male, we're going to need your support. We're going to need the entire Greek system, from the Q dogs, the Kappas, the Alphas, the Sigmas, because, we created, the O, which is the cipher, and you guys are in that. But we need all hands on deck, the Nation of Islam. We need that security. The fundamental Black Americans, we have to have that support. The 5%ers, we have to have that support. We really have to, map out, what we need moving forward, because now that we're realizing that the devil is a Democrat and we're delivering ourselves from this burning house, now we can go straight to the federal government, and take these receipts, and figure this thing out and get those cash payouts, because they owe us a whole bunch of bread. But we got to have a conversation, because we know without a shadow of a doubt, our educators, look at their data. Okay, they'll take these onesies and twosies, the NAACP will give you, an award, and, but we talking about the group. Okay, we're not talking about your son, your daughter. We're talking about the masses. They're not educating. They're basically setting the next generation up to be criminals, to be the next prisoners, and the data's there. How can you be an educator and be proud of the results that you're getting? The results are terrible. The generation, this new generation, these YNs, and I can say YN because I'm an old nigga, okay? Because these YNs, man, it's crazy, and the girls is worse. Okay, because if you want to go get in a rabbit hole, go watch these girls fighting and drive-throughs, and the mama pulling up, they shooting, they doing all of this. And this book right here is life changing. So we're gonna, moving forward, we're gonna have conversations about it, and it's the making of a slave. And they have basically, in short, focus on a woman. If you could get her, focus on her. You can. It's like breaking a horse. Teach her to eat out of your hand, and she'll do the same thing to her children. Even if they're big and strong, they'll be feeble-minded and, be something different, like Dwayne Wade's son and Magic Johnson's son, because that's what they want, because they are scared of Black power. They are scared of educated Black men, because they know without a shadow of a doubt that they're wrong. And we're not going to do anything to hurt anybody. I love all humanity. I love white people. I love everybody. Respect is where respect is due. And, we're not going to just sit back and, let, you guys run the race and the culture into the ground. But like I said, I'm turning the light on our educators, though, because it's on y'all. Y'all not teaching the truth. Y'all not teaching the truth. Y'all signed up with the party of the devil. And y'all teaching these babies, and it's sad and it's sickening, and we're going to have to fix it. So my time is up. I'm your man Bushan Glover. A Better Black America TV on YouTube, a Better Black America Radio show on Facebook. So hit that like, hit that notification, hit that subscription, because we're going to be talking about it. And next week we're going to be talking about the reparations package that I just received, and I'm going to be going through it with a fine tooth comb, because I be leaning on a lot of lawyers. Because if you did not know, Johnny Cochran said after the OJ trial that he was going to get with some of his lawyers and put together a class action lawsuit. And that class action lawsuit is going to go on the federal level, because the states, the Democratic cities and all of this, like I said, Gavin Newsom vetoed the reparations bill in California. And in the state of California, our preachers, teachers, and educators voted against Proposition 6, which was to end involuntary servitude, which is slavery. So basically, the 13th Amendment reads neither slavery nor voluntary servitude unless criminalized, and it means slavery is still legal. Let that sink in. So with that being said, have an amazing day. I'm your man, Bushan Glover, Better Black America TV on on YouTube, and a Better Black America radio show on Facebook. So have an amazing day. Peace out.